Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of the Rose and Rubini podcast, Making Sense of This World. My name is Manas Chavla, and as always, I'm really pleased to be joined by CEO and Head of Research, Brunella Rosa. There's lots going on, but today we're discussing the outcome of the G7 summit in Hiroshima, Japan. Brunella, let's start off with a bit of the bird's eye view. Every year, the G7 releases a very important communique expressing what sort of all its member states agree to be the most important points, geopolitically, macroeconomically, and otherwise. What were the significant things agreed to this year?
Yeah, lots is going on, and we gave a bit of a preview in our reviews podcast, especially focusing on this theme of de-risking versus decoupling, which was cited, of course, in the final communique. Many points were, in fact, included. First of all, there's the condemnation of the illegal aggression of Ukraine by Russia. That's the way the G7 labels it. And at the same time, they want to strengthen the operations to conduct nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. So effectively, they want to stop or limit the possibility of an escalation in the war and going unconventional with the use of nuclear weapons. And then, of course, there's the key point about the risk versus uh, decoupling. We said that, in our view, the risking is just the first phase towards decoupling. At the moment, the G7 seems to say, no, we just want to kind of diversify the sources of our inputs in our global supply chains. It shouldn't be only China, should be other countries and so on. This, in our view, is the first step towards a bigger decoupling down the line. And of course, there were a few points on energy transition, on food security, and again, finally, the reiteration about this infrastructure plan called Partnership for Global Infrastructure Investment, which is supposed to be the alternative to China's BRI from the G7, but with only 600 billion in financing promised by seven of the largest countries, largest economies in the world. It seems really not enough to counter the various initiatives that China has put on to increase investments abroad. So, lots going on, lots put in the communique, but again, the focus has been Ukraine to begin with.
Got it. And there was a sort of big focus on one particular attendee of the conference, the Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky. And there was a sort of lot of talk about whether or not he's going to attend. That stayed until days before the conference. And when he did, he met with sort of all the key G7 leaders and those of other countries, many of which have had sort of ambivalent positions on the war thus far. What was his mission coming to the G7, and did he achieve it?
Yeah, so he had already met with lots of the G7 leaders on a bilateral basis, so that was meeting them again. What is probably a bit new is the fact that he met with Indian Prime Minister Modi and Brazilian President Lula, who have expressed a more neutral view in this war, let's put it that way, Cold War between US and China. They want to remain a bit in the middle if they can. In fact, they were non-aligned countries during Cold War One, so they like to retain that kind of position. We don't think this is going to be possible for way too long. For the time being, they are in the position of hedging the status. What Zelensky wants to tell them is, look, guys, this is a very ugly war. It's not going well for anybody. Being neutral is like supporting Russia's aggression, so you cannot keep this position for too long. Not sure whether he has accomplished that mission just yet, but having opened the dialogue is important. Is also true that all G7 leaders said that Zelensky's presence was a bit of a game changer during the meeting.
Right, and the G7 also issued, as part of all this, its strongest condemnation to date of China's position regarding the war, which obviously comes at an interesting time because China thus far, although sort of optics-wise, perceptually, has tried to maintain a position of neutrality, even though it's quite clear that they very much sort of support the Russian side and would like one side to win over the other. In response to all of this, has China done anything significant?
Yes, so the G7 has condemned China for effectively its position, not just on a war, asking Beijing to intervene on Moscow if possible, but also because of the many disputes that China has on the sea, East and the South China Sea, and not, of course, the least on Taiwan. China clearly didn't like any of these. While the G7 was taking place, an alternative summit of Central Asian countries took place in Beijing, a way of saying, you may meet guys, but you have the world war, the new world is going to be here in terms of growth, in terms of population, in terms of economic activity. So you have your meetings in Hiroshima. The real leaders will be here, are here, and will be here in the future. And as a sign of retaliation, they've actually banned the use of Micron products. Micron is a user of microprocessors from the US. And it's a bit of a retaliatory move from what the US decided regarding Huawei and ZTE. So while the hot war continues, also the cold war between the US and China and their allies continue as well.
It's very interesting, and I think it sort of points to this global trend where, in the absence of what we previously had were effective forms of global governance, things like the UN Security Council, the G20, they're increasingly divided by this bipolar competition between the United States and China. In the former by virtue of a formal veto, in the latter by sort of almost an informal veto where they can't particularly, agree on anything in particular and therefore divide and fragment the blocks as necessary. And as a result of all of that, there's a regionalization of global governance, and in that sort of market, G7, BRICS, and other various sort of regional cooperative organizations are increasingly more important. So that's a trend I think we'll continue to watch for years to come. As always, Brunello, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you very much. Until next time.